Welcome to Life Stories, where we share powerful tales of love, resilience, and personal growth. Today, we bring you a story about Emily Green, a devoted mother and successful marketing manager, whose life takes an unexpected turn when a special reward for her hard work is taken from her. This story is about standing up for what's right, the power of family bonds, and the lessons learned along the way. Join us as we dive into a journey of betrayal, reconciliation, and triumph. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to start today's story. Emily Green lived in a small, cozy house nestled in the suburbs of San Francisco. The house was surrounded by a white picket fence, a picture-perfect setting that reflected her life, at least on the outside. To the world, she appeared to have it all: a successful career, a lovely home, and a son who brought her immense joy. Yet, behind the white picket fence, Emily's life was a delicate balancing act, one that required constant juggling between work, motherhood, and family obligations. For 10 years, Emily had worked tirelessly as a marketing manager at Adventureland Entertainment, a major theme park planning company. She was known for her creativity, dedication, and ability to turn even the most challenging projects into resounding successes. Over the years, Emily had earned the respect of her colleagues and superiors, especially her boss, Michael Davis, who often praised her for her brilliance. She was the kind of person who threw herself wholeheartedly into her work, believing that the fruits of her labor would not only advance her career but also provide a better life for her son. Jake, her 10-year-old son, was her greatest source of pride. The bond between mother and son was unbreakable, built on years of shared experiences, mutual respect, and unconditional love. Jake was a curious and intelligent boy, always eager to learn. His fascination with dinosaurs and space was unending, and his eyes always sparkled with excitement whenever he shared his latest discoveries with Emily. Despite being a small family of just the two of them, Jake meant the world to Emily. Every day, she worked hard to provide him with everything she thought he needed, whether it was a warm home, nutritious meals, or the opportunity to explore his interests. But, like most people, Emily's life was not without its complexities. She had a mother, Margaret, who lived not far away, and while she loved her daughter deeply, their relationship had always been strained. Margaret was a strong-willed woman, someone who rarely bent her opinions, even if it meant causing friction within the family. It wasn't that Margaret didn't love Emily, but she was always vocal about her preferences, especially when it came to her second daughter, Rachel. Rachel, unlike Emily, had always been the favorite child in Margaret's eyes. It was a subtle favoritism, something unspoken but evident in every interaction. Margaret was quick to shower Rachel with praise, and Rachel, for her part, never hesitated to flaunt her position as the apple of her mother's eye. This dynamic was not lost on Emily, who, over the years, had grown accustomed to it. But no matter how much she tried to brush it off, deep down, it still stung. The comparisons between Jake and Rachel's twin daughters, Lily and Ava, were constant. "My girls are just like me," Margaret often said, a comment that, to Emily, carried an implicit judgment about her own son. It was as if Margaret's words were a quiet way of saying that Jake wasn't good enough, that he didn't measure up to her precious granddaughters. Emily had learned to hide the hurt behind a smile, convincing herself that it no longer bothered her. She focused on her work and her son, trying to create a peaceful and loving environment for Jake. But there were days when the weight of it all would come crashing down. The subtle, unspoken tension would linger in the background, and she would catch herself wondering whether her mother would ever see her for who she truly was: a hardworking, loving mother who was doing her best. One morning, as the sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, Emily stood by the counter preparing a lunchbox for Jake. The warmth of the sun on her face made the moment feel peaceful. But as always, her mind was running 100 miles a minute. Jake, always eager for the next adventure, was sitting at the table, his eyes bright as he dug into his breakfast cereal. "Can I go to the library with Jason after school today?" Jake asked, his voice filled with excitement. It was his favorite time of the day, when he could get lost in books about dinosaurs or the mysteries of outer space. Emily smiled at him, her heart swelling with pride. "Of course, sweetheart," she said, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. "But be home by 6. Grandma's coming for dinner tonight." Jake's face lit up with anticipation. But Emily couldn't ignore the tightness in her chest. Her mother's visits always carried an air of unease. She tried not to let it show. But there was always a subtle tension when Margaret came to visit. Emily often wondered if she would ever feel like she could truly relax around her mother. Still, she pushed the thought aside. For now, her focus was on Jake and his excitement for the day ahead. As she handed Jake his lunchbox, she offered him a smile, masking the inner turmoil she sometimes felt. "I'll see you later, kiddo. Have fun at the library. And remember to be home by 6. Jake nodded enthusiastically, already lost in thoughts of his next adventure. And as he walked out the door, Emily felt the familiar mix of pride and longing, the desire to protect her son from the harsh realities of life, but also the need to let him grow and experience the world on his own terms. She watched him walk down the sidewalk, and for a brief moment, she allowed herself to believe that, despite everything, her life was as perfect as it could be. She had her son, her work, and her dreams. What more could she ask for? But even in that moment of peace, Emily knew that her family's dynamics were far from ideal. It was only a matter of time before the next storm would arrive. The day began like any other. Emily left her house early for work, her mind already brimming with ideas for the new marketing campaign she was overseeing at Adventureland Entertainment. She loved her job, and each new project was an opportunity to showcase her creativity and drive. But little did she know that this day would take an unexpected turn. One that would shake her to the core. As the day unfolded, Emily received the kind of recognition that professionals only dream of. Jonathan Higgins, the president of Adventureland Entertainment, called her into his office. Jonathan was a man of few words. But when he spoke, people listened. He told Emily that her contributions to the Central Park project had been nothing short of outstanding, turning what was once a struggling idea into one of the company's most successful ventures. His praise was sincere, and Emily could see how much he valued her work. "Emily, I want to personally thank you for your hard work and dedication," Jonathan said, a warm smile on his face. "As a token of our appreciation, we'd like to offer you these special tickets to the new Universal Studios attraction. It's for you and your son to enjoy." He handed her a gold-embossed envelope, and Emily could hardly contain her excitement. The tickets were for an exclusive event, the grand opening of a new attraction at Universal Studios, a dream come true for any family. But especially for Jake. Emily knew how much he had been looking forward to this. How he had talked about the new rides and the dinosaurs he wanted to see. This was more than just a reward, it was a chance to create a special memory with her son. One that they would both cherish forever. As she left the office that day, the weight of the envelope in her hand felt like a symbol of everything she had worked for. She had earned this, not just as a professional but as a mother who wanted to give her son the best experiences life had to offer. She could already picture Jake's face lighting up when she told him about the tickets. It was going to be a perfect weekend, one that would make all the long hours and sacrifices worth it. When Emily got home, she was eager to share the news with Jake. But as she entered the house, she was met with an unexpected challenge. There, in the living room, sat her mother, Margaret, as if she had never left. The tension in the air was palpable, and Emily's heart sank a little. Margaret had arrived early for dinner, as usual, but there was something about her presence that always seemed to complicate matters. Emily knew her mother's well-meaning, but often overbearing nature would make this conversation harder than it needed to be. "Mom, I've got something special for Jake," Emily said, trying to sound cheerful despite the weight on her shoulders. Margaret glanced up from her phone, offering a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh, what's that?" Emily held out the envelope, her voice filled with pride. "These are tickets to Universal Studios. For the new attraction. I got them as a reward for my work." Jake's going to be so excited. Margaret's eyes flickered with interest. But there was no joy. No enthusiasm. Instead, her face remained oddly neutral. A hint of something unreadable in her expression. "That's nice," Margaret said casually, looking back down at her phone. "I'm sure Jake will enjoy it." Emily felt a small pang of disappointment. It wasn't that she expected her mother to jump for joy. But the lack of reaction stung. There were times when she wished her family could understand her. Truly see her for what she was. A hardworking mother trying her best. But it seemed like those moments were few and far between. Later that evening, as Emily prepared dinner, she tried to push her feelings aside. It was difficult not to feel a sense of emptiness when her mother's visits were always overshadowed by subtle judgment. Still, Emily forced herself to focus on the good, Jake's excitement, the upcoming trip to Universal Studios, and the promise of a special day. When she tucked Jake into bed that night, she kissed him on the forehead and whispered, "I've got a surprise for you tomorrow. Buddy, we're going to Universal Studios next weekend. Just you and me." Jake's eyes lit up. "Really, Mom? That's awesome. I can't wait." And for that brief moment, everything felt right in the world. Emily smiled, feeling like she had finally found something she could give her son, a day of joy. Something truly special, just for the two of them. But little did she know, this would not be the smooth, carefree experience she had imagined. What she thought would be a simple, heartwarming moment of joy would soon unravel into a situation that tested her strength as both a mother and a woman. The days passed in a blur of anticipation. Emily's mind was constantly preoccupied with the upcoming weekend, her heart swelling with excitement at the thought of the memories she and Jake would create at Universal Studios. She imagined the look on his face when they walked into the park. His eyes wide with awe at the attractions they would experience together. It was supposed to be their special day, a reward for all the sacrifices they had made as a family. Nothing was going to spoil it, nothing. That is, except the unexpected arrival of her mother, Margaret, and her sister, Rachel, as Emily prepared to leave for her business trip that Thursday morning. She carefully placed the gold-embossed envelope with the Universal Studios tickets into a drawer in her bedroom. She wanted them to be safe, to hold on to that sense of excitement until she could reveal the surprise to Jake. She closed the drawer, reassuring herself that everything was in order. 3 days later, Emily returned from her business trip, eager to reunite with Jake and share the exciting news. But when she walked through the front door, her heart dropped. She had barely put down her luggage when Jake approached her, his small face filled with confusion and worry. "Mom, I can't find the Universal Studios tickets," Jake said, his voice edged with anxiety. "Where did you put them?" Emily frowned, her stomach twisting into knots. She immediately rushed to her room, thinking perhaps she had misplaced them in the hustle of getting ready to leave. But as she opened the drawer where she had stored the tickets, her heart sank. The gold-embossed envelope was gone. She searched the entire room, but the tickets were nowhere to be found. Panic began to creep into her chest as she called out to her mother, who was in the kitchen. "Mom, did you take anything from my room?" Emily asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Margaret, ever so casual, replied, "Oh, those tickets? I gave them to Rachel's girls, Lily and Ava. They deserve something special more than Jake. Don't you think?" Emily's mouth went dry, and a wave of disbelief washed over her. "What do you mean? Those tickets were for Jake and me. They were a reward for my work. For everything I've done for this family." Margaret simply shrugged, her tone dismissive. "Your sister's daughters are cuter than Jake. Don't take it personally." The words hit Emily like a slap in the face. Her mother, the one person who should have understood how hard she worked, had taken something so precious without a second thought. Emily's mind raced, and her heart ached for Jake, who had been waiting so eagerly for this special day. She called her sister, Rachel, hoping against hope that there had been some mistake. But when Rachel answered, her tone was smug and indifferent. "Don't worry about it, Emily," Rachel said with a laugh. "My girls deserve the experience more. Besides, you can always buy more tickets." No big deal. The anger and betrayal Emily felt were overwhelming. She had always been the one to hold the family together, to keep things civil, but now, it seemed, everything was falling apart. She hung up the phone, trying to control her emotions. But her thoughts were a whirlpool of hurt, disappointment, and frustration. At that moment, as she stood in her room, staring at the empty drawer where the tickets had once been, a thought crossed her mind. There was something about those tickets, something that Emily hadn't fully realized at the time. They were issued as a special acknowledgement for her work on the Central Park project. They were meant for her and Jake, and anyone else who tried to take them was essentially committing a form of theft. With newfound resolve, Emily picked up the phone and called her boss, Michael Davis. She explained the situation, barely holding back tears as she recounted the betrayal. Michael, ever supportive, listened patiently, and when she finished, he assured her that she and Jake were the rightful recipients of those tickets. He even offered his help to make sure they could go to Universal Studios as planned. "I'll take care of this, Emily," Michael said. "We'll make sure you and Jake get what you deserve." Emily felt a small flicker of hope. But it wasn't until the following day that she realized just how far she was willing to go to reclaim what was rightfully hers, and, more importantly, to stand up for her son. That Saturday, as Margaret and Rachel prepared for their trip to Universal Studios with Lily and Ava, they walked up to the gates with a sense of superiority, convinced they were VIP guests. But when they handed over the stolen tickets, everything changed. The staff at the park scanned the tickets and immediately informed them that they were invalid for anyone other than Emily and her immediate family. Margaret's face drained of color as the reality set in. The tickets, which she had stolen from her daughter, were non-transferable. The staff, with a firm but polite tone, explained that the tickets had been issued as a special recognition of Emily's hard work and were only valid for her and Jake. The truth had come crashing down. As Margaret and Rachel stood there, stunned and embarrassed, Emily and Jake arrived at the park, walking past them with heads held high. It was a small victory, but it was theirs, and in that moment, as she looked down at Jake, Emily realized just how important it was to stand up for herself and her son. To protect the people she loved from harm, even when that harm came from her own family. As the day at Universal Studios unfolded, Emily and Jake enjoyed every moment together. They experienced the thrilling rides, met the characters, and laughed as they shared unforgettable memories. The special treatment they received, thanks to the efforts of Michael Davis, made the day even more extraordinary. Despite the earlier tension and betrayal, Emily felt a deep sense of peace. She had stood up for herself and her son, and in doing so, she had reclaimed what was rightfully theirs. As the day drew to a close, with fireworks lighting up the night sky, Emily and Jake sat on a bench near the magical castle. The colors of the fireworks reflected in Jake's eyes as he whispered, "This is the happiest day of my life, Mom." Emily squeezed his hand, her heart full of pride and love. This was the moment she had worked for. This was why she had fought so hard for their happiness. Later, as they returned home, Emily felt the weight of the day's events settle into her heart. Her relationship with her family would take time to heal, but today had been a powerful reminder that standing up for her loved ones was worth the struggle. As they walked through the door, Emily looked down at Jake, knowing that this day would stay with them forever. And as she sat down on the couch, reflecting on the changes that were slowly happening, she smiled to herself. Family bonds could be fragile, but with love, understanding, and the courage to stand up for what's right, healing was possible. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay updated with more inspiring life stories.